Wow, we're live, Jonathan, for the first time in 6 months. How does that feel?
Feels like it's been about 6 months.
Lots of things have changed. If the people that are more observant will notice, you have a new background behind you now.
Yeah, I moved. All the celebrity fame that came from the original season of the podcast, people started tracking me down to my house, and I had to move.
Yeah, that's true. I'm moving next, so
get off our nuts. Seriously.
It happens. That's what happens with fame. So, yeah. But anyway, let's be real. There was plenty to talk about between now and then, but really the good stuff happens after the draft. I think we can both agree with that.
Relative to what we are interested in, absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. So with that said, I think we will just jump right in and look at each position and what we like and what we don't like. That should cover plenty of ground, I would think.
Yeah, we're going to be able to say a lot of shit in the next hour or so. And we'll just.
I would think so. And let's just in general, and we sort of touched on this before, but I feel like there's more, at least, and given this is super early, I feel like there's more Dynasty/fantasy relevant players out of the gate this year than last year. What do you think?
I couldn't disagree more, but I guess we can go into that as we go. Like
that's the theme of these podcasts, just so we're clear. So,
what do you mean by everyone's more like? Does that mean that nobody's really good, so anybody could have an impact early? That's the way I look at it. Like I think I don't quality.
No, and I don't mean it that way. What I mean is, and look, I fully concede the ceiling might be lower this year than last year. Okay, because you had guys like Evans and Beckham. I get that, but it seems like okay, so last year was maybe quality over quantity, and this year maybe quantity over quality.
Exactly.
Okay.
I would 100% agree with that.
Okay, so for example, running backs this year, you have a lot, relatively speaking. I mean, there's 4 right out of the gate I can think of that I'm pretty sure are better than last year's rookies. Would you agree?
Yeah, considering in most drafts, I think the first running back off the board was probably Carlos Hyde. I would imagine anyway.
It was Sankey, but Hyde was close.
Was ours Sankey as well?
Oh, you mean in our Dynasty draft?
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, he was. Draft. Yeah, Sankey was, and then Hyde, but Hyde was a top 5 pick too. So.
Yeah, so I think obviously Sankey was just a complete miss as far as media production is concerned, and Hyde is a wait and see guy. Although I think he'll be good this year. There's 2 people out the gate that may get 1,500 yards and 10 TDs in their first year. So.
Again, I could go with 3 if if I'm being optimistic.
Are you talking Abdullah?
No. Okay. No, because I think they will give Joyke Bell every opportunity, which is foolish, but whatever. No, I'm all about the Yeldon personally, but we can get to that. So,
okay.
Anyway, so with that said, let's go in chronological order. Let's cover quarterbacks first. So, let's talk about who you like and who you don't like.
Well, I'm not going to do it. I mean, I'll do it a little bit that way. I will do it. So I don't like everybody that wasn't the first or second pick. let's do it that way.
Okay.
That's fine. I don't see any long-term stature for any of those guys.
You mean outside the top 2?
Yeah, man. Like all of them are.
I agree.
The one that may get the earliest shot is Bryce Petty. Ironically, he's going to get the earliest shot, and I think he has the most development to do. But he got one of the best deep threat receivers in the draft, and he turns out to be one of the best deep ball throwers in the country. So there may be some early success there that they can build on. And Chan Gailey's pretty good at making quarterbacks good, seemingly out of nothing. See Quincy Carter, for example.
Oof.
But it's just those 2, man. Like if I'm looking at this dynasty draft and I have a spot to fill and I have to have a quarterback, those are your only 2 shots in my eyes. And if you want to move up and get one, fine. I wouldn't do it because I think other people can be had other places. I would lean towards Jameis Winston immediately because I think the weapons are there, and Dirk Cutter as an OC is going to be good for him and being able to exploit matchups. He had 2 receivers that were relatively tall at 6'2" and 6'1" in Atlanta. He's got 2 taller people now. I think they'll be good at playing basketball, essentially. You saw what he did with Kelvin Benjamin. He seems comfortable with that kind of catch radius. So I think you'll see an immediate return there. Mariota, man, the more I look at him, the more I just don't know. Like, I just throw my hands up, and I'm like, I don't trust Ken Wisenhunt as a developer of quarterbacks at all.
Agreed.
But they had the potential to do a better version of what Tampa has with Dorial Green-Beckham and Justin Hunter, and Delaney Walker as a tight end. Like, they could be better at the skill position than Tampa. Their offensive line is better by default because they're not Tampa, and they play in the worst division too. So I don't know, man. Like, my only advice is if you have a feeling about one of the two, stick with it, ride it out. Those are your only two chances to get somebody.
Yeah, I would agree with pretty much all of that, which I read something today that said, ironically, Mariota might be a better fit in Tampa with the type of offense they want to run there. But it's in the past now. But so I guess for comparison's sake, I think it's fair to say Teddy Bridgewater came out of last year's Dynasty and NFL draft as the best quarterback prospect of that class. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. So I guess a good question is, where do you rate these two, Mariota and Winston, compared to Teddy Bridgewater as a rookie? Not now, but as a rookie.
This may not be entirely fair, but I'm on record. I love Teddy Bridgewater. I put them slightly behind Teddy Bridgewater.
Okay. That's fair.
Mariota.
That's fair.
Yeah, I love Teddy Bridgewater. I still do. I think he's going to be awesome, especially if they get him receiver help that he deserves. But I think you could actually see, just from an accumulation standpoint, Jameis could have a better rookie year. He could end up throwing for like $4,000, 25 TDs, and like 27 picks.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to talk myself into the Bucs again this year somehow. I'm just going to do it. But there's a good chance they suck again, and there's a good chance they play from behind a lot. They don't believe in the running game. They're not even picking up Doug Martin's his fifth-year option as a first-rounder.
Well, that's because Doug Martin's not good.
So. Well, apparently. So if he's not good, there's no one else behind him that's any good. I don't know what they're going to do besides run the ball, besides pass the ball. And they have the horses to do it. So he could accumulate a bunch of sacks, just be ready to have a bunch of 275, 2 TDs, 3 interception kind of games from him, I would imagine.
I think you can roll with, personally. Look, unless you've got an Andrew Luck or an Aaron Rodgers on your side, that's all you need, I think, from that position,
I would agree.
And furthermore, they've got Dirk Cutter there, who, while, a lot of people won't know that name, he's the one that essentially turned Atlanta around and made Matt Ryan fantasy relevant. So the whole reason Matt Ryan is top 10 potential in Dynasty is Dirk Cutter and just how many plays they run in a game. And look, Matt Ryan is Jameis Winston. Mike Evans is Julio Jones. And I said that in reverse order, but that's okay. So I agree with you. Personally, I love Winston. I don't even think it's close with Winston and Mariota. I would take Winston all day, every day. Now, that's not to say I view him higher than some of the other skill position players, and we'll get to that. But for me, it's not even close. The whole Mariota thing, first of all, I view him as the inferior quarterback between him and Winston. Secondly, as you alluded to, he's in a worse situation, I think. Okay. Look, Green Beckham is a good prospect, but we don't know yet. I mean, look, Justin Hunter was a good prospect too, but that didn't really work out. So I with Mariota, to me, it's just very apparent that Winston is the guy to roll with between those two. And I agree with you about your broader point, which is there's no other quarterback worth a damn in this draft. And that's okay. I mean, look, they draft them that high for a reason, okay? Because quarterbacks are in very high demand and there's very low supply. So, to me, it's not even close between Winston and Mariota. If I'm in the middle of the first round of a dynasty draft, I would take Winston, I should say, and not even look back.
I would disagree that I don't think it's close. I actually think the situation, but being on, and this is where fantasy people get in trouble, I think the situation actually is a little bit better and more stable for Mariota to begin with because the offensive line could actually be good. Whereas in Tampa, it's a complete gut job, man. It is from top to bottom the worst offensive line in football. So, and they're breaking in a second-round rookie left tackle to protect Winston against what I would say is the much better defenses within the division. I think Mariota has a couple of things going for him in the sense that Wisenhunt is not afraid to run the ball. The offensive line is going to be better than what Jameis has to deal with. I mean, the division, man, the division is not good. The Texans with Clowney back healthy, theoretically, and Watt would be a bit of a trouble. I don't believe the Colts are going to be good rushing the passer until I see it. Sorry. The Jags could be a little bit better on defense rushing the passer, but they still don't scare you. And I don't know. Like, I think it's closer than what you're probably alluding on to, but I still have no problem with Jameis being ahead, especially initially. I think long-term Jameis is better than Mariota. But if Mariota, I would not be shocked at all, and I'm hedging my bet a little bit here, if he took a big jump up about halfway through the year. So just a more stable situation, I feel, than what's in Tampa. Also, I mean, Lovie Smith has never been one to let his quarterbacks just do whatever they want. It's a pretty tight leash there. So something to look at as well.
Yeah. Okay, so to round this out, where would you think it would be a good idea to draft both of them in a dynasty rookie draft?
End of the first, man. So from pick 8, 9, 10 and on, somebody might reach for them early, and that's fine. I don't think the quality's there. I don't. This is not for a quarterback that early in today's NFL. It's got to be an absolute can't-miss prospect. It has to be somebody you know is good for a decade. Andrew Luck is worth the first, second, or third pick in a dynasty draft when he comes out,
and he was, I think.
But anyone else, man, it's just hard for me. Even Bridgewater in our draft went at 5th, and everyone thought that was an overdraft like none other. And I love Bridgewater, even
but it worked out.
Kind of.
Well, okay.
Who else I could have had at 5th is Odell Beckham.
Well, okay. Look, I got Odell Beckham in the second round of a dynasty draft.
But that's my point. Like, I think the second tier of drafted wide receivers, if put in the right position, will produce better for longer than the quarterback in whatever position they're at. Yeah. So, especially with just today's NFL, man. So that's my opinion. Maybe you're different than I am, but late first, early second. If someone
I think that's right. I mean, look, it is partially situational, meaning if you're a team that is just very low on quarterback depth, which, look, let's face it, there's a lot of quarterbacks out there. If you're in a one quarterback league,
that's the other thing.
There's no reason you shouldn't have a top quarterback. If you don't, then you're probably doing it wrong. But so if you're in a league like that, which unfortunately we are not, you and I, we are in a 2-quarterback league.
Yeah.
I mean, quarterbacks are important. So in that kind of situation, I could see a Winston or Mariota going in the first half of a dynasty draft. I mean, again, we'll get to this. There's 4, I think, guys that are a consensus top 4 that will go top 4 in 90% of the drafts out there, at least at this moment in time. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if either one was in the top half of the draft between now and, when the season actually started. So,
yep. And if that happens, just let them have it.
Yeah. I mean, look, there'll be a quarterback next year that will be in the draft that will be comparable. I guarantee it. So, all right. So, yeah, again, quarterback is fairly clean cut. Let's get to running backs, which is, there's more quantity, but probably more quality too. Would you agree?
Yeah, entirely.
Okay. Absolutely. So you can lead off. First of all, who do you like? And let's just get to the obvious.
The obvious are Gurley and Gordon. I don't even think that's debatable. I think Gurley is the generational talent of this draft, if there is one. And I'm not saying anything new here. Like, this isn't revelatory at all. If you watch Todd Gurley play football, the guy's a goddamn monster. Like, he's awesome. Melvin Gordon's a little more, and we kind of put this in the mock draft, and I wrote it out there. It's a lazy comparison to make, but Jamal Charles is the comp, and it makes sense on every aspect of the comparison. So right down to the hair, unfortunately for him. But those two are people that are going to walk into a situation that are immediately put in the backfield and told to go do things. And they can both do anything you want them to do. Keep a track of the knee for Gurley, obviously. But even if he has trouble and he doesn't start till week 2 or 3, don't let that hold you back. The only reason you would take Gordon over Gurley is if you are just one piece away, and that piece is going to lead you to a title now, and you need those 1 or 2 week. And nobody should ever look that micro. So the third one, it seems like we disagree on a little bit. Like, Yeldon, I like a lot, but he's one of my players I would classify as great player, bad situation. And there's a couple of these that I'm going to mention throughout the time. He's just his short, again, Alabama running backs, man, with their short space agility and their acceleration is just not as good as you'd like it to be. If he plays in a traditional offense where he's allowed to get a little bit of a head start and run into people and run around them, he'll be fine. but I even Abdullah, I'm not a huge fan of, but I would have him over Yeldon.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, I think so. And I think Abdullah can do more out of the backfield initially, too. Maybe he develops that later on. And I can't really think, is there another running back we're missing that we should be talking about here? I mean, Jay Ajayi is interesting as long as you like the knee, but yeah.
Yeah, not really that are obvious. I mean, look, I think it's fair to say that this year was a unique year for running backs, meaning, like you mentioned, last year the first one didn't go till the second round, and that was Bishop Sankey. Well, by the end of the second this year, you had 4 off the board. And, to be honest, I really like all 4. I really do. I think they all have, potential. And that's not even counting the third round guys like Coleman in Atlanta, who, look, whoever wins the starting job there will be pretty decent. And it's wide open. I think we can agree on that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got Duke Johnson in Cleveland, who, again, there's really Cleveland just in general, there's no rhyme or reason to who they started last year at running back and why. So who knows? I mean, Duke Johnson could end up, leading the pack out of preseason. Who knows what the hell they're doing there? I don't.
Also, David Johnson in Arizona. If he won the job, that would be an awesome deal for him too. But I can't project him to do that.
No, but I think, especially for those guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, it's a gamble no matter what. And you mentioned David Johnson. I think that's an ideal situation because you're going to get him at a pretty good value. Okay, whether it's, I think the earliest would be late 1st round, and I think the latest would be late 2nd round. But either way, Andre Ellington is not a, bona fide starter. I mean, they just, for whatever, look, they drafted the guy for a reason. So,
yeah, and Arians has talked about his need for a bigger back. Like, he openly talks about it.
Right. So, and it goes back to what I was saying before, which is there's a lot more quantity this year than quality. I think you can get a lot of guys, later in dynasty drafts that you couldn't get last year. Look, I remember getting James White fairly late, like 3rd or 4th round from New England, and thinking, oh, I did pretty good. Well, look, James White wouldn't go in the 3rd or 4th round this year. He'd go like a lot later. So, so let's do this. So I think it's fair to say you like Gurley, you like Gordon. Name one other guy you like for running backs. It could be their situation. It could just be their value, whatever.
This is hard because this could make me look real dumb later because I don't know what the knee looks like. But Jay Ajayi, man.
It's early.
If Jay Ajayi, if the knee holds up and everyone, like from what you hear about it, it's just simply like the knee is going to go at some point. Don't know when. It could be tomorrow. It could be 5 years from now. If it's 5 years from now, I think Jay Ajayi is the starter there by week 4 or 5 in Miami.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. Like Lamar Miller is fine, but he's one-dimensional, lacks in pass coverage and pass blocking. And it's obvious again they wanted someone to replace him or at least challenge him. I don't know that Noshawn Moreno is worth it. Is he even still there?
I think so. Maybe he signed a 1-year deal. Hold on, I can look that up. But keep talking.
Like and the Ajayi thing, man, the size they want for that. He provides everything they were missing last year. He's basically
he's a free agent.
Okay, that's what I thought. Ajayi, he's just basically a better version of Noshawn Moreno in my eyes. And if the knee holds up, man, he could be a really nice player for them.
Well, and let's talk about this briefly. What are you buying Miami or are you selling Miami this year as a team?
Relative to what?
As one of the top half of the teams in the NFL or one of the lower half?
Sure, they were a top half team last year. They've done nothing to let me see that they're any worse. They signed the best player for agency, who's an automatic upgrade. They signed what I think is one of the best receivers in the draft in Devontae Parker, so drafted him, not signed him.
Which we'll get to.
Sure. The tight end situation is about a wash unless Jordan Cameron's head really is as bad as they say it is. I think they've improved across the board, to be honest. It's hard for me to say they haven't. Yeah. And as long as Tannehill stays status quo and even slightly improves, then, yeah, I think they're a top half team. And I think they're probably a top 10 offense, too, to be honest.
it's one of those things that they're very interesting to me because they're not a sexy team by any means, but you look at who they got there and what they did last year, and they did some good things. I mean, look, even with Lamar Miller, he, was a top 10 running back in fantasy. I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah.
The team as a whole is interesting. So, but I applaud you for going out on a limb with Ajayi because look, whatever reason he dropped in the actual draft. So he could be a pretty good value in dynasty drafts. I agree with that. So, and then for me, I mean, look, it's Gurley, it's Gordon. And I mentioned this to you before. Personally, I really like Abdullah, and I think he could be pretty good value. Like, and it's very possible he shoots up dynasty draft boards and is the third running back taken in dynasty drafts by the time we get to that point. Because, Joik Bell's, I think, 30 now, or at least 20. No, I think he's 30 now. And look, in Detroit, Joik Bell has not had much competition for that role. Can we agree with that?
Correct.
Okay, so Abdullah is Joik Bell, just like a version that's 8 years younger. So, everyone's saying that Abdullah should run circles around him by the time the season starts. You never know with coaching staffs and all these old school thinkers. But at the end of the day, I think Abdullah will have a better season than Bell. And look, in that offense, I would take anybody in that offense, quite frankly. So, yeah, if Abdullah's the starting running back by midseason, then I'm all over that. So,
he is. Man,
he scored very well. Let's just reminisce. He scored very well in the combine. He had the best spark score of any running back.
Yeah, I know.
And he's in a good situation. I love that situation. Look, I think I'd agree with you. It all depends on if you're looking at the team or the opportunity. So Yeldon should start right away. There are no other running backs in Jacksonville that should start. With Detroit, there's a lot of players around him that running back they're not going to rely on as much as they would in Jacksonville. I think they need to rely on running back in Jacksonville more than they did last year because Blake Bortles was awful. So,
the comparison I would make, and this would be an absolute ceiling, but the comparison I'd make to Amir Abdullah would be Gio Bernard. He's just not as big, man. He lacks about Gio Bernard does all the things Abdullah does, only with an extra 18 pounds in his frame. And that kind of thing, I mean, it's going to be important at some point. But man, yeah, his short field ability, his ability to make people miss, hit a hole and explode, especially in the backfield, he'd be good. He could be a slightly better version of Reggie Bush in that offense, and they've needed that for the last couple of years because Reggie Bush has just been stealing money from them, unfortunately. It's not his fault. Got hurt, and body can only go as long as it can go. But I like him a lot. Watch the fumbles with him. I mean, it was an issue in college. They'll try to fix it, but if he fumbles, they're just gonna bench him. Yeah. But I'm not opposed to that. It's just I worry about backs that are going to have a primary role as in the passing game to begin with, because even if they're only in on passing downs, which are third down basically only, or second sometimes, they're also only the third or fourth best option on said play. So the odds of them getting that reception or being the focal point of that play are very slim to begin with. So you're kind of counting on big plays, which he can provide. But if you don't get those, then you're kind of shit out of luck.
Yeah. Okay, so let's now talk about a running back maybe that you don't like. That maybe, looks or was drafted highly maybe, but you're going to avoid. Who is that?
I don't know. Let me think about that for a second. That's a good question. Do you have anybody in mind already?
The Duke Johnson pick, and it's not so much Duke Johnson himself. It's just that situation is just horrible.
Yeah, but Duke Johnson's so awesome, man.
Look, again, I'm not denying that, but let's rewind the tape. Who was the better running back last year in Cleveland?
I don't know. They were all. I mean, Isaiah Crowell to me was the best, but I mean,
okay. So, and everyone would agree with that. Yet there'd be some games he didn't start and didn't get a snap and didn't get a carry. So I don't disagree that Duke Johnson is good or really good, but they've got Terrence West. They've got Isaiah Crowell. They don't have a quarterback. They've got, I guess, better receivers than last year, which really isn't saying much. It's just I don't like those situations where it could literally go either way. You know.
Yeah.
It's just not. I just would not be comfortable with that. I would not be comfortable with that guy in a dynasty rookie draft until, late second at the absolute earliest. Earliest.
That's fine.
All right, so you're up now. Go.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Davis.
It could be Gurley and Gordon. You just don't like
they're automatic.
other people.
Sorry. They're automatics. Mike Davis from the Niners. I don't see how he sees the field in the first year at all, to be honest. And we don't run a zone scheme, which I think he would fit better than a power scheme. I know some people say he'd fit a power scheme well, but not at his size, not at his running ability. He doesn't work really well with low pads. He just ran over people in college because he was powerful, which he is. There's no way about it. But he's going to have a lot to work on. And as of right now, assuming best case scenario, he's fourth in the depth chart from day one. He's not better than any of the running backs they have already. Kendall Hunter, Reggie Bush, Carlos Hyde. Am I missing anybody?
No, I just can't believe Kendall Hunter is still around. But
Kendall Hunter's fine, man. Like Kendall Hunter's a decent dude. They got him like an $850,000 contract next year on a 1-year deal. Now Davis may be able to play a backup role next year when both him and Reggie Bush are gone, assuming he stays in the team. But he just doesn't do anything great. He's sort of a jack of all trades, master of none, and I just don't know where he fits in, to be honest. And the Niners are known for drafting a running back or two every year anyway. So even if he is the second running back going into the draft next year, there's a damn good chance they draft another one regardless.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So, yeah, it'd be cool if he was good, but as a Niner fan, but I don't think he's going to be.
Yeah, that's probably fair. So, but at the end of the day, I still think there's just a lot more running backs this year that you can roll with in a dynasty draft than last year.
Yeah, there's a lot more to sift through. You're going to have to keep track of training camp and see what situations pan out.
I mean, there really is, because, if you do your draft like the actual NFL draft and your better teams draft later in the first, that's okay this year. I mean, you've got a lot of guys that are going to be drafted later. I mean, in our mock draft, you had Yeldon and Abdullah last until the last part of the first.
Yep.
That's awesome. I would love that.
Well, and to that point, like someone like myself, I think I'm going to end up having a top 3 or top 5 pick this year. I'm going to do my best to trade that for a somewhat established veteran to fill a hole for me, and add picks along the way, because I don't think there's a big difference in the top 5 versus the bottom 5 of the draft in the first round.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that.
Yeah, that's it, So,
all right, so let's now talk to probably the most convoluted, complicated, confusing, whatever other C word I can think of group of wide receivers. Well, not that C word, but so let's just cover the first round guys, and then we can get to beyond that. Because look, there's 5 first round guys that are going to be drafted pretty early in your dynasty draft. So they all warrant some mentioning. So let's just get to it. Okay. Well, and I guess the first question would be, and again, you and I have talked about this. You've got Amari Cooper, who was 4th overall to the Raiders. Mm-hmm. Is he, in your mind, at this moment, the consensus number 1 receiver?
I don't know, man.
Well, let's just assume our dynasty draft was today, okay? And you were drafting receiver. Like, that's all you could draft. Who are you drafting?
Trade out?
No. We're going Mel Kiper rules here. So you can't trade out.
Listen. Yeah, it's probably Cooper.
I love your conviction, though. So.
I don't have one, man. I don't have one at all. Cooper is the most polished out of everybody. I think the situation is actually pretty good for him. I don't think Oakland's going to be nearly as bad as people think. And he's going to walk into a situation that asked for him from day one. The thing about Kevin White, and I see the potential and I get it, and I'm all about it. I love Kevin White, but he's not going to walk into a situation where he's required. He's the 3rd best option on that team. He's with a quarterback. The Bears are the oldest offense in football.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and so let me tell you what happens when the oldest fucking offensive football starts to break down with a brand new coaching staff and a coach that traditionally has said run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Like, and a quarterback that may or may not actually want to play football anymore. Like, all of that just adds up to a really scary situation for me. I think Kevin White was more talented than anyone else in the draft as far as receivers are concerned. But you've got to have a lot of faith with John Fox, Jay Cutler, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you got to have a ton of faith in that. And I'm not there yet. Not quite yet.
And I think that's fair. The Bears, just as a team, are very in flux, let's say, right? So you alluded to it. They're a very old team. And you've got Matt Forte, who's on that cliff. You've got Jay Cutler, who seemingly is always on a cliff. And here's the other interesting part, though, that I will just share with you that might change your mind. Alshon Jeffrey is a free agent after this year. Okay, he's not, after this year. They haven't re-signed him, so it's very possible. And you know me, I'm more of a situational dynasty player than potential. It's very possible they just go, you know what, Alshon, like, we're going to rebuild. We're going to let Matt Forte go. We're going to draft a quarterback, and Kevin White is our number one of the future. That's very possible.
Sure.
And, you and I, when we talked about Kevin White, you drew the Cordarrelle Patterson comparison, which I don't think is quite as accurate, but I understand what you're saying, meaning you're banking a lot on potential, but I think he's a lot closer to realizing that potential. And look, that situation is fantastic. I mean, Brandon Marshall showed that even with Alshon Jeffrey playing on the other side of the field, you could still have wide receiver one numbers, okay? And it's even more likely now that they don't re-sign Jeffrey. I mean, look, I think it's fair to say it's not a good idea to re-sign a receiver that, if you could just draft one or plug one in. There's not many receivers that transcend matchups and weather and contracts and all that kind of stuff. So, but with all that said, it may be time to start taking the Raiders seriously, which I cannot believe I'm saying, but with Cooper there, who I think in a vacuum is probably the best receiver in this rookie class, Derek Carr, who showed potential, I will not deny that. He showed some competency there. And look, the AFC West is, I mean, I hate to use this term because I know you love it, but it's a gunslinger division. They just chuck it around. It's a high-scoring division. There's no defense in that division. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really torn right now on the Cooper versus White debate. I really am.
Well, to use your argument and turn it on its head, you would be drafting Kevin White because maybe in a year he'll be the number one guy in a bad offense.
Well, but even that, look, Brandon Marshall still had 1,300 yards with Alshon Jeffrey playing beside him with Jay Cutler and Matt Forte. The nucleus was still there.
Sure. If you're going to tell me that Kevin White is Brandon Marshall from day one, then yeah, sign me up. I'm not going to project that out.
Even if he's not Marshall, if he got 1,000 yards, I think you'd be happy with that.
Yeah, relatively speaking. And I'm not saying that's out of the realm of possibility. I'm just saying, like, there is no doubt about Amari Cooper's role from day one and what will probably be going forward. It's the number one guy. Kevin White could get there in a year or two, and you may see the same results. I just think I think they're about as close to equal as productivity in the long run can get, to be honest. The extra year or two you get of a guaranteed Amari Cooper at a number one receiver, I think tips me in the scales against Kevin White, because I don't see a big difference in the two. I really don't, as far as production is concerned. They should both put up the same kind of numbers, but
Cooper, I think we can agree on this, is probably the safer pick, right?
In theory, yeah.
I mean, long term, honestly. I mean, right now he's the most polished receiver. As you alluded to, he's the number one target from day one. There's no doubt about that. I mean, look, they cut James Jones. Rod Streeter, for some reason, has been around a while, but probably shouldn't be. There's no one else. And look, I credit the Raiders for getting another good player. I mean, look, they did it last year with Mack, which we can cover on future podcasts. But And I don't know who to attribute that to, but they seem to be turning that ship around.
And you know what's going to be hilarious is when this all ends up being like the 2010 draft all over again, where it's Darren Hayward Bay versus Michael Crabtree, where it's the polished guy versus.
Okay, you know what? How dare you? No, how dare you? Okay, that was dumb. No, that was dumb from the get-go.
I'm just saying in general, you have a high ceiling guy and a polished receiver who should dominate from day one, and they both suck ass. Like, this could end up happening all over again.
Yeah, but I hope not. I mean,
well, it'd be funny from the Raiders' point because you say, "Oh, we learned our lesson. We didn't go for the speed guy." Yeah, it doesn't matter. He sucks anyway.
Well, but I like to think, it's almost like the Raiders the last 2 years have really been paying attention to the mock drafts that are out there from guys like you and me, and they're going, yeah, okay, like it can't get much worse. So last year they did Mac, which was a great pick, and look, it turned out to be an awesome pick. Yep. Mac is very good. And then this year they're like, well, Cooper, like no one would be mad if we took Amari Cooper, and no one was. It made perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think, it's just one of those things that there's just no clear-cut winner between now and when the season starts. So, you just gotta be careful and just monitor the training camp reports and hope for the best, I guess. So.
And for the record, as we wind this down, we talk about moving back in the first round. If you have someone that is just thirsty for one of these two receivers, I don't think the gap is any larger between those two than it is between those two and Devontae Parker. I think Devontae Parker is awesome.
Good segue. So I'll let you carry on.
So if you go back to watching him in 2013 when he had Bridgewater and he was healthy, he was dynamic. That guy could moss anybody you wanted to. He got open across the middle. He could break tackles on bubble screens. He could do it all. So, again, same thing with Jay Ajayi. As long as the foot checks out, because he doesn't have any issues with, like, Achilles or ACLs, et cetera. It's just a broken foot that it's sort of like the Julio Jones thing. You just want to make sure it may creep up again, but it's recoverable. I think and that offense, too, he's going to walk into what I think is a 1 or 1A situation with Jarvis Landry, and the targets are there from day one. I think he's going to be awesome. I was going to say earlier that this is a guy that it's a bad situation to avoid him because of that, but I can't do it. Devin Smith is going to be a dynamic receiver in the NFL just because of his ability to do everything at full speed and never slow down. Like, he only ran a 4.41 in college, at the combine. But if you watch him in college, everything he does, he doesn't slow down for anything. It's amazing to watch him adjust speed in the air, know when to speed up, know when to slow down, how to put people just in a rocker, basically, and get open downfield. Geno be damned, man. They can go find another quarterback next year and that can throw the deep ball. He will be awesome. He'll be like T.Y. Hilton, only bigger.
Okay.
God, I love Devin Smith. I love him so much.
I know you do. And that, and again, this can be a topic for another day. I like the Jets in general, which sounds insane, but again, we'll cover that. So first, though, let's stick to the matter at hand. I think I agree with you about Parker. I mean, look, they have Jarvis Landry, but no one will say Jarvis Landry is a 1A option. He never will be, okay? And Kenny Stills is what he is. He's a deep threat, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he will never top 50 receptions in a season, but that's okay. I think Parker, and I agree with you, has the attributes of a wide receiver 1, okay? And I think the only thing holding him back right now is Tannehill and making sure Tannehill can keep progressing, okay? Because it's just very polarizing with Tannehill. You've got some people that go, no, he's got the stats of a quarterback 1, but then others that go, well, not in the traditional sense of a quarterback 1. So I think it really depends on what your feelings on Tannehill are, right? If you think Tannehill is capable of a quarterback 1 season, then Devontae Parker at 5 in your Dynasty rookie draft makes perfect sense because he's the de facto wide receiver 1 there. But if you're down on Tannehill, which personally I am, and again, we can talk about this later, Parker, I would be comfortable drafting in the later part of the first round, but he certainly wouldn't be the 5th pick for me.
So you're down on Tannehill, huh? You don't like the
I
panic.
don't. They picked up his option, so he's going to be there for a couple more years at least. But I don't know. It seems like every year people peg Miami as the breakout team, and slowly but surely they get there, but they're not all the way there. I mean, look, they were barely a 500 team last year, so it's not like, oh God, they were on the cusp of the playoffs. Now, as you mentioned before, they signed Suh, which is a great signing, obviously.
Wait, they signed who? No, do that again?
Suh,
No.
whatever. I'm not saying his first name. So look, that improves them automatically. I agree with that. But I don't know what to make of them. I really don't.
He's a very good, if not great, quarterback who finished. Where do you think he finished last year in DVOA?
Oh, it was top 10.
He finished 12.
Okay.
Like he's a very good quarterback who could take another step forward with better receivers. And I think he got them this year. I think he got better receivers. I think they're playing better to his strengths now too. Mike Wallace is a deep threat, and Ryan Tannehill can't really throw the deep ball past 30 yards. So they kind of rectified that by saying, all right, well, we'll get you a deep threat that doesn't need the deep ball. He should just be glad he's got a job. And we'll give you everyone else that you're really good with, which is working over the middle underneath. I think you'll see an uptick in his production a little bit. It wouldn't surprise me to see him as a top 8 fantasy quarterback, and at which point I think you're going to see an uptick in the offense all around. So
we can agree on one thing, which is they have given him every, I think, possible opportunity / tool that they could. And if he doesn't make that leap from, above average to good quarterback this year to elite quarterback, then it ain't going to happen. So it's a real make or break year for them. So
yeah, maybe. I think he's pretty good. Like, I don't know that he'll ever be like, I hate to use like the phrasing of elite or great, but I think he's fine. Like, if he
is he elite? Are you saying he's elite?
I'm not. God damn it. No, I mean, I think he's fine. It wouldn't surprise me if he was a top 6 or 7 guy one year. It wouldn't surprise me if he was a top 15 or 20 guy. He's the definition of very talented and probably needs the right situation and the team to cater to what he's good at. And I will say it looks like they're finally doing that. Like, he was never a guy that was going to push the ball downfield when they built their offense to do that last year. That's why they brought in Laser. They brought in people that can run more of a West Coast horizontal attack. Second year in that, I think he'll be pretty good. He reminds me of Matt Ryan, honestly. Get him in the right offense, he could be a Matt Ryan. We'll see if they ever get him in the right offense.
Yeah, well, and to me, it's just further proof that even though there's 32 teams in the NFL, that doesn't mean there's 32 guys that can play quarterback in the world.
Nope, just means 32 have to. Right.
And not to say Tannehill is like 32nd or 31st. He's not. But,
correct.
It's a tough business, man. If you don't have a quarterback, it's very hard to build anything around that, But
it's also essentially a contract year for him. So I assume he'll be pretty good.
Yeah. That does seem to be what happens. So.
Yeah, just a guess. So.
All right, so let's talk about Philadelphia and Nelson Aguilar. I think I'm pronouncing that right. What do you think about him? I mean, he's entering a good situation, but the question is, yeah, I think so. Personally, look, he's better than Riley Cooper. Can we agree with that?
I mean, that's fine.
Well, yes or no?
In this offense, I don't know, man.
All right, well, go. I'll let you have the floor first.
So you better have, if you're going to be the size he is, which is barely 6 feet and under 200 pounds, you better have an elite skill of some kind that you can rely on to get open in this offense. Jeremy Maclin he was about 6 foot, but he was about 210, 215, and was elite in and out of breaks and had some of the best hands in football. Riley Cooper is great at being really big and being a great run blocker, which you have to be in this offense because they're going to run it a ton. Okay? And he's also very good. He has pretty good hands too. Racist thing aside. So I don't know what he does. And then you have Jordan Matthews, who is just basically the exact same thing as Riley Cooper, only not a white racist. Yep. So where does he fit in? He's a shorter guy who's smaller, who doesn't have long arms, only 32-inch arms. Hands aren't huge. and did nothing elite at the combine. It doesn't project to do anything elite at the next level. So are we saying it's just because he's going to be the fourth best option the second he gets into camp? I don't know. I just don't see it. Sorry.
Well,
have I switched you? Have I turned you?
Well, look, that's not to say I was a fan of his to begin with. I mean, I don't think he's, going to overtake, say, Jordan Matthews as the top target in that offense.
I don't think he overtakes Riley Cooper. Sorry.
Ooh, hot take. That's hashtag
you have to run block in that offense, and he's just not going to be able to do it initially.
I get that. So, but I also think they drafted him in the first round for a reason. And look, even if it looks bad initially, I think Chip Kelly has a lot to prove at this point. I think that's fair to say. So, and I'll say this: the pick itself was interesting, right? Meaning, you would think, maybe they might get some secondary help in the draft. They might. I mean, there certainly wasn't a quarterback worthy enough to be drafted that high.
No.
So, just the pick itself was interesting to me. But I think he enters a good situation. I still think Jordan Matthews is the top guy there who, again, we can cover this in later editions. But, look, he's the top guy there in that offense now. I don't think there's any question about that. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you never know with Chip Kelly. You don't know what you're going to get. I think the only thing you can guarantee is DeMarco Murray is still going to be a running back one, right, in that offense. Other than that, again, put up your hands. Put up the I don't know hands. Go for it. Exactly.
I think I can guarantee he's not going to be a starting receiver because of his size. He's a slot guy because he has to, in that offense especially, you have to be an extremely effective run blocker on the outside, especially with the running backs they now have with Ryan Matthews and obviously to a further extent DeMarco Murray, who like to get that lane, bust it open, run past the secondary. If you can't run block, you're not going to play in that offense, man. So 3 wide sets, 4 wide sets, yeah, he'll be good. If you're telling me he's a generational slot receiver, okay, fine. But even if he is, you're not taking the ball out of the hands of the guy you just gave $45 million to get it to your rookie slot receiver. Like, that's just not going to happen. So there's a ceiling for me with him because of his size and because of his ability that just doesn't exist with the other receivers. Like, if I'm drafting for this from a dynasty perspective, I would take Devin Smith ahead of him. I'd take Dorial Green-Beckham ahead of him. I would take everyone that was drafted in the first round ahead of him, to be honest, obviously. And then from there, it gets a little sketchy from there. I'd probably take Philip Dorsett ahead of him just because I think there's a clearer path to playing immediately.
Oh, no, we'll get to that.
And then even maybe Jalen Strong, because I think he's going to play from day one on the outside, and he's a guy who's 6'2", 220, who's going to be on the outside. I think he was kind of overdrafted, to be honest, but we'll see when we get there. Like Tyler Lockett, to me, Tyler Lockett is better than Nelson Aguilar, sorry. And he got drafted 4 rounds later, or 3 rounds later. Like, I just don't get it, man. I don't know.
It definitely is one of the more curious picks.
If you get points for punt and kick returns, there's value there. But that's not – I don't know if that moves.
And I agree with everything you said. So I think he definitely, at this point in time, could be one of the more overvalued guys as far as these rookies go.
Yep.
Right? Because I think people, and myself are included, see the offense and they've got stars in their eyes thinking, oh, God, like everything Philadelphia touches is gold. And it's a rookie, and he's probably going to start right away. But the reality is, like you said, they are a run-first team. And look, they've got not only DeMarco Murray, they got Ryan Matthews now, who, again, their integrity is intact by keeping their deal with him. But look, they're going to have to find carries for him at some point. Okay. So yeah. I agree with you. I think, Matthews and Ertz are probably the only receivers to own on that team, right?
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So, But let's get to one of definitely the more curious picks, which is Philip Dorsett. I'll let you go first, and then I'll chime in.
When I first heard it, I was, shocked.
Well, you were half asleep. I told you, and you were half asleep. So
yeah, I was half asleep. I did not make it to the draft. Getting old's a bitch. So I was a little bit shocked, but then I thought about it, and I was like, man, I can't imagine facing a team that has Andre Johnson, maybe even Moncrief on the Johnson and Moncrief on the outside with Hilton and Philip Dorsett on the inside on a 4-wide set. Good fucking luck. You will see.
No pun intended.
Yeah, that was no pun intended. All right. I am a douchebag. You will see so many forwards in this team because it's going to be undefended. You can't defend it. There's no way you can. You're going to have either cornerbacks one-on-one on the outside with Andre Johnson, who can still win that like Bolden can with the Niners, or you're going to have safeties one-on-one on the inside against two of the fastest guys in the league. And Andrew Luck, in any position, compromised or uncompromised, can throw it 60 yards downfield whenever he wants to. Like that, this could take their offense from what I think was a very good offense to maybe the top 1 or 2 efficient offense in the league next year. It's going to be kind of amazing to watch. What it does do, I think, if they use it properly, is devalue all of the tight ends in Indianapolis. So if you have one of them, you're going to look into dumping them now. But I think you're going to see Peyton Manning 2.0, to be honest, man. This is just going to be another version of that. And when he was at his best, he had Brandon Stokely on the inside and Dallas Clark, who was ostensibly another receiver. He wasn't a tight end.
Yeah, I love it, personally. I'm very high on it. And it's the ideal pick, especially, sort of what we touched on before. If you're later in the first round of a Dynasty rookie draft, this is ideal because, A, he's entering one of the top 2, I would say, situations for a receiver in the entire league. But 2, and again, this cannot be understated enough. He is T.Y. Hilton to a T. Okay?
More or less, yeah.
The frame, the style, all of it.
Yeah.
T.Y. Hilton is a free agent. It's not unreasonable for the Colts to go, you know what? We really, really, really don't want to pay T.Y. Hilton, who, again, he's an undersized receiver. We really don't want to fork over a lot of money to him when we have to re-sign Andrew Luck to probably a record deal. So let's just go ahead, draft his replacement now. And as you said, for 2015, I mean, your top 4 receivers could go toe-to-toe with the top 4 receivers on any team, okay?
Yep.
But after this year, look, okay, you lose Hilton, fine. You still have Dorsett, Moncrief, and Andre Johnson, okay? Not bad. It's really not bad. So for Dorsett, he is the, perfect guy to draft if your dynasty team is, maybe full of veterans and you don't have a lot of holes and you're looking at potential. He is public enemy number 1. I love him. I really do.
It's entirely fair. It's a lot to like. And this is a situation where the person going to the spot he's going in Indy makes him a little better than he would be otherwise.
Agreed. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Because, look, as you said, he's the 4th option on that team.
Yep.
Okay. So
he's still an option that will explode in certain situations and certain matchups.
Right. So he's going to draw the safety on opposing defenses? Okay.
That's what I said, man. Good luck at the safety in that division, trying to cover him one-on-one on any flag route, any post route, anything where he has to turn his hips and run with him. No thanks.
Yeah. I love it. Again, if he were to fall to me in the late 1st, early 2nd, oh, God, I would. And look, you and I did a mock draft the other day. He was still available technically after the 1st round, after 12 picks.
Yep.
That's insane. I would love that. That would be ideal. So
he sounds like he's your Devin Smith for me, basically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, he really is. I mean, it's amazing to me the depth there is this year. There are no Odell Beckhams, there are no Mike Evans, but man, there's just a lot of guys. I mean, you could, and believe me, I love your strategy you mentioned before, which is if you got a top pick, it won't hurt to trade back a little bit and pick up a piece or two, whether it's a veteran or another pick, because there's not that much difference.
There's only one generational talent in this draft. There's only 2 that will get you to be the envy of the league. It's a 2-person draft. Yeah. If you're 3 or beyond, I would trade the living hell out of it.
Yeah, I could not fault you for that. I really couldn't. So, All right. So I know we covered all the first-round receivers. Let's just briefly touch on some receivers that maybe were not in the first round that you either like or don't like. Is Devin Smith pretty much your guy? That's your boy?
Devin Smith is my guy. Dorial Green-Beckham is also another guy that I think in the right situation, and I don't honestly know enough about the infrastructure in Tennessee to say he's in the right situation. So this is just me, again, sort of half-assing this and hedging my bet here. But he should be good. He should be very good. Tyler Lockett, again, I think he went to a really good situation. But again, I worry about like Seattle drafting all these small players, man. At some point, like if Tyler Lockett turns out to be as good as I think he is, which may be the best receiver on that team, which is not saying a whole lot other than Jimmy Graham, what's to stop a team to take from putting their 6'1" corner and just locking him up from day one? That worries me. Like they need more diversity in their receivers, and that kind of worries me. The guy I wanted to ask you about, well, there's two. So Devin Funchess for one.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about him?
It's not like I view him as any better than the first round picks, and certainly, I don't view him as better than Devin Smith. I, don't view him as better than even Jalen Strong. But I will say this: Carolina took a risk in taking Benjamin last year because it was essentially the same argument with Funchess, meaning, he's sort of on the fringe of wide receiver, tight end position, right? So I'm not going to discount Funchess from the get-go. I'm not necessarily buying in totally, but look, Cam Newton, as much as, maybe people don't want to admit, is a very good quarterback, and they've got a good infrastructure there for Funchess to go off of. He's not entering the same situation as Benjamin did when he's it. He's the only guy on the outside, and he still made it work. I mean, Funchess will have some of the pressure taken off of him. So, I think he could be decent value because, look, he could contribute right away in that offense. And he's got a good quarterback, and he's got a good situation. So do I think he has enough talent to overcome any situation? No, I don't. But with that said, I think he's entering a good situation. Does that make sense?
It does. The other guy, this is a bit of a homer pick, but if you have patience for someone and you have a taxi squad, you can carry him around for a year. DeAndre Smelter, who went to the Niners out of Georgia Tech. He could be pretty special because there's going to be nobody ahead of him. I go to numerous websites, and all the websites that compare him constantly compare him to Eric Decker, which if you have the patience, he tore his ACL, so he might be out for the full year, if not most of the year. But if you have the patience, this is someone who, if he develops correctly, could play every day, be an awesome number two, maybe even possible number one receiver in the right offense. A little bit of a project, but his physicality, his run blocking, his ability to run without after the catch is pretty impressive.
So for 49er fans, it's essentially Marcus Lattimore all over again.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, and that ended well. So,
well, I mean, look, Tennessee quarterbacks up until Peyton Manning kind of sucked too.
And they pretty much sucked after.
Yeah, so I wouldn't pass on a generational talent because Tennessee quarterbacks suck. Like, that's fine. Don't do that.
That's fine. Okay, so I think we've covered that pretty in depth. I mean, look, we can always go back and cover second, third, fourth round guys. But let's briefly touch on tight ends, and this probably won't take long. But I'll let you sort of take this one, and I'll chime in if you missed anything.
Okay. There's only two that matter.
Two? That's one more than I thought you were going to say.
Only two that matter. Okay. So, good old Max with two X's. That's all I'm going to refer to him from now on. It's just Max with two X's. But Max Williams is the guy that's going to be the number one target out of a tight end this year. Obviously, he's going to walk into what I think is a starting position from day one. The talent is undeniable. He's very, very good in a straight line. He's pretty good moving laterally. He has awesome hands. Go check out his highlight reels. And I know they're just highlight reels, but go check them out one day on YouTube. He makes some stupid catches. He's going to be the number one guy you're going to draft. From what I understand, he's kind of a dick. Like, he turned off a lot of people in interviews, and I actually had a couple buddies who went to Minnesota and actually spent time around the program there, and he's just kind of full of himself. I chalk that up to immaturity. Like, he was never violent. He was never destructive towards people or other things. People that are just immature dickheads, obviously, they kind of grow out of that after time, so I'd be fine with that. Like, whatever. But I think he'll be really good. I think Flacco's going to like him a lot. The other guy is Clive Walford out of Miami, who went to the Raiders. The Raiders, who have no developed tight end really to speak of. I mean, Michael Rivera is fine. 7th-round pick out of Tennessee. He has a little bit of talent, but he's not a guy. He's just a guy. Whereas Walford, I think, with his measurables and what he did at the Combine and what he can produce and what I watched him do in college, I think he can produce pretty well. I'd be hesitant to take him any sooner than the 2nd round. So if someone takes him in the 1st and they need a tight end, or there's a run on tight end, or someone takes him before you in the 2nd, so be it. But he can move all around the field. He can block when he's asked to. He's getting much better as it goes along, to be honest. A lot of runs, if you watch Duke Johnson, which I loved watching, you'll see him involved in a lot of his big runs downfield because he can block at the 2nd level if he needs to because he's such a good athlete. So I think with that, he'll see the field early. I don't think there's reservations about having him worry about protection schemes and things like that. So he has some focus drops. He's going to drop the ball frustratingly every once in a while. But, man, he's a specimen. He's fun to watch. When the other thing is here, you're going to see a theme with me. If you have a Miami player on your team, they're going to be good because Miami's coaching staff was awful, and I assume just through transitive property there will be a good bump by just getting actual coaching. Like, Al Golden and his staff have to be some of the worst coaches in football just on a game day experience. Obviously, he can recruit because he had 2 first-rounders, like 3 guys in the first 3 rounds. He's pretty good at that part. But, God, man, schematically, he's kind of an idiot. But when they did actually split Clive out wide and got him one-on-one with a safety or a linebacker, he beat them consistently. Like I said, it's just the drops that kind of killed him on occasion. So have I taken up too much time of yours? Do you have anything to add at all? I know you're going to draft Max Williams because you have a thing for white tight ends. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
I do. It's my fetish. And, if he's there, I'll probably take him. But, well, and actually, I should backtrack a little bit. We did forget one first-round receiver, which is Brashad Perryman, also from Baltimore.
Just because you're drafted in the first round doesn't mean I have to talk about you.
No, I know. I'm just saying. But both of them, look, and again, I may be more of a Mark Trestman fan than most, but whether it's Max Williams or Perryman, I'm higher on that offense this year, at least from a passing standpoint. Because I think Trestman, that's all he knows, okay, is vertical and downfield. So, Max Williams, depending on how your league scores it, and again, you and I are in a league that has 1.5 points per reception for a tight end. So Max Williams is like probably a top 5 pick in that league. But it's fair to say he's the only tight end that's worth a damn as far as rookies go. A lot of guys, are, to use your phrase, are just a guy, meaning, it's you could take a guy and see and roll the dice and see if it works out. With Waylon, I could see it just because Oakland seems to be ascending offensively. But, Max Williams is the only guy that is probably worth mentioning, at least as far as the first round goes. So if you're able to get him, great. You've got a leg up on the other teams in your league as far as rookie tight ends go. Yeah. And look, if you don't get him and, you're 1 or 2 picks away, do not reach and draft a guy like Waylon or anyone else. Just wait, because there are a ton of those guys you could draft later, and it won't really matter. Would you agree with that?
No, entirely. Yeah, I don't have any disagreement with that. Like, if you need a quarterback or a tight end this year, you're going to be hurting a little bit. If you need any other position, you're going to be spoiled with choice. You're going to have options.
Right. And I think actually, and that's how we can round this out. And that's perfect. If you have quarterback or tight end needs, unless you're in a position to get one of the top guys, just wait, because it ain't worth it. It truly isn't. Running back and receiver, for whatever reason, there's just a gluttony of those this year. So feel free to wait and stand back a little bit. But, yeah, quarterback, tight end, you can definitely wait on that. So
totally agree. And I think going forward in the next couple, and you guys can tell us if you want to hear this, we can do a defensive breakdown as well. We have thoughts on defensive players, but it seems like it's better to post that stuff on the website and let you guys.
Just briefly on that, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't – I mean, last year your top IDP guys were obviously Clowney, Mosley, and Shazier. But they played the IDP premium positions. I don't recall a guy in the first round anyway that was either a pure defensive end or a pure inside linebacker. It's all edge rushers or middle linemen or whatever, right? Seriously, I don't recall an IDP guy drafted in the first round that would be worth anything. And not to say they're not going to be good NFL players. I think there's a ton of those, but in traditional fantasy scoring, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of guys that fit that criteria.
No, probably not. I think it depends how you feel about Dante Fowler. If you think he's a high sack guy and an every down linebacker.
Even then, though, I mean, he's an outside linebacker / edge rusher. So, look, if you're in a big play league that rewards more for sacks than tackles, okay, I could see that. But again, there's no pure defensive ends that are strictly going to get 15 to 18 sacks a year, and there's no middle linebackers that are in line to get 100 tackles in a year.
Stephon Anthony, drafted by the Saints with the 31st pick, which is towards the end of the first, still granted, but it's
you know what? I will concede that. I will grant you that because they did get rid of Curtis Lofton, and they do need to fill that hole. So. But again, that's one out of 32 picks that I can recall.
And so we covered defense. So yay.
That's probably fair. So anyway, anything else to add, Jonathan, before we round this out and I go have dinner?
No, go have dinner. For the record, we have no opinion on Deflategate. We don't give you NFL news. Sorry, don't know what to tell you. I don't have an opinion.
Look, and if I'm Tom Brady, like I'm squarely in the don't give a fuck phase. It's like, great. I won the Super Bowl. What do I care? It doesn't matter at this point.
From a political standpoint, I hope this is the time. I hope this is where Goodell gets his comeuppance. I hope he tries to suspend.
It won't.
For games. And the Patriots are like, really? How about you suspend these nuts?
I liken Roger Goodell to the Clintons, where no matter how many times you punch him in the face, and no matter how many controversies pop up, they just don't die.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah. That's why Hillary's going to win the presidency, and that's why Roger Goodell ain't going anywhere. Okay? For whatever reason, they are able to withstand a barrage of attacks and still get up. So, no, that will not happen anytime soon. The only thing that would compel the NFL to get rid of Roger Goodell is if he, was like caught in the act of like murdering somebody with the weapon in hand and photographic evidence. That's the only way.
Like, remember the Chappelle Show skit back in the day where they were asking him about what it would take for them to convict R. Kelly?
Yeah. Roger Goodell is R. Kelly. So
pretty much, yeah. He's the white R. Kelly of the NFL.
Yeah.
So we went there. That was cool. All right.
It's a hot take.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, no, we will resume these on a more regular basis. I'm thinking in the next week or two we can have a follow-up one. And believe me, there's a lot of ground to cover. So there's no shortage of topics and information we can talk about. So
agreed.
Until then, we will see all of you next time.
Later.